that massive correctional facility in Chicago, which from the outside looks secure and orderly, but inside it's a scene straight out of a nightmare. Here, night didn't begin when the sun went down, but when humanity itself came to an end. Predators hiding behind badges came every night doing whatever they pleased. The incarcerated women couldn't speak up in fear. They knew that if they said a word, their lives would turn into a living hell. But then a force rose to shatter those walls of darkness. Her name was Detective Sarah Mitchell, a fearless and determined officer who had sworn to uproot every form of corruption from the system. She declared, "This will no longer be tolerated." And then she made a decision, one that could change her life forever. Sarah removed her detective's badge and disguised herself as a helpless inmate. The mission was clear, to catch the injustice happening inside the facility with her own hands. On the very first night, the worst officers in the facility came inside and their eyes fell straight on Sarah. Now the question was, would a detective meet the same fate as the other inmates destroyed at the hands of those predators? Would that terrifying night become her final mission? Or would Detective Sarah Mitchell catch all those wolves right inside their own den? Part 1. The Iron Detective. In the state of Illinois, there lies a city named Chicago. A city that looks vibrant on the outside, but inside it's filled with darkness and horrifying truth. They say the city never sleeps. In this very city worked a fearless and strong-minded police detective, Sarah Mitchell. From the outside, Sarah appeared professional and composed, but inside, she was as strong as steel, relentless for justice, and unshakable in her principles. The biggest criminals in Chicago would start sweating just hearing her name. It was well known that even hardened criminals would confess out of fear of Detective Mitchell. Sarah had risen from a small town in rural Wisconsin to this great city of Chicago. Through her hard work and determination, she earned her detective's badge. She wasn't just an officer, but a beacon of hope for those who had been victimized. Her principle was simple. No matter how powerful the abuser, accountability was certain. That's why her name spread fear through every precinct of Chicago. One morning, Detective Sarah Mitchell was sitting in her office at the precinct, sipping coffee and scrolling through the latest news reports on her tablet. Suddenly, the door opened. A correctional facility staff member named Marcus entered. He worked in the kitchen and maintenance at the Chicago Women's Correctional Center. His face was pale. With hesitation, he said, "Detective, I've got something real important to tell you." Sarah set down her tablet, pushed her coffee mug aside, and said seriously, "Yeah, Marcus, go ahead." "What's going on?" Marcus said in a frightened voice. "Detective, the female inmates at the facility aren't safe. At night, they're treated real bad. They're threatened, intimidated, and exploited." Sarah's face turned grave. In a stern tone, she said, "Do you realize how serious an accusation you're making?" Marcus's voice trembled. "Yes, ma'am, but I'm telling the truth. The same guards who do their shifts during the day are the ones who abuse the female inmates at night. They scare them and take advantage of their helplessness." A flash of anger appeared in Sarah's eyes. "Do you have any proof of this?" Marcus took a deep breath and said, "Detective, I've seen everything with my own eyes, but I don't have the power or the courage to collect evidence. If I had spoken out, I probably wouldn't be alive today. That's why I came to you, because I trust you." Sarah fell silent for a moment, a deep line forming on her forehead. "Marcus, when I visited the facility last week during my inspection, why didn't any of the female inmates file a complaint?" Marcus lowered his eyes and said softly, "Ma'am, they all live in fear. They're threatened that if they speak up, they'll face consequences beyond imagination." Sarah rose from her chair and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. After a brief silence, her voice turned as hard as steel. "Marcus, you've shown real courage. Now it's my turn. Tonight, I'll personally visit the facility without any advance notice." Part 2. The First Visit. That evening, Sarah Mitchell arrived at the gate of the Chicago Women's Correctional Center. Amidst paperwork, protocol, and security checks, Corrections Officer Jackson escorted her with professional courtesy, showing her every section. Everything in the files seemed perfect. The logs had no errors, and from the outside, the facility looked like a model institution. But Sarah's experienced instincts knew. The real truth always hides behind the walls where ordinary eyes cannot reach. She called the female inmates into a private room and began speaking with them. But every question met only silence. Some lowered their eyes, others' lips trembled, yet no words came out. Fear, exhaustion, and a strange helplessness were written across every face. Sarah immediately understood. This silence was more terrifying than 1,000 screams. Until these inmates believed that someone was truly there to protect them, they would never speak. Part 3. The Decision. The next day, Sarah sat in her office. A case file lay open before her, but her eyes were lost in thought. A single question kept echoing in her mind. How can the truth be brought to light? That question itself became her decision. She resolved to take the biggest and most dangerous step of her career. She knew the time had come to lift the curtain, even if it meant putting her own life at stake. She called her trusted colleague and said in a calm but determined voice, "Tonight I'm going in undercover as an inmate. No badge, no ID, no notice. Only then will the real truth come out." Part 4. Into the darkness, and then came that night. That dark night, which not only shocked Sarah Mitchell's life, but also revealed to her the darkest face of humanity, law, and justice. The date was March 18th, Thursday. The time: 9:00 p.m. The atmosphere of Chicago carried a strange, suffocating stillness. The air was cold and damp. Around the facility, correctional officers were half asleep, half awake, doing their shifts. Some were lost in vape clouds. Some were pretending to keep watch while others were drunk on power, abusing their authority. In that very situation, Sarah took a step that required nerves of steel. She changed into standard-issue orange prison scrubs, pulled her hair back into a simple ponytail, removed all her jewelry, and with a fake identity, entered the Chicago Women's Correctional Center. This mission was like walking alone through darkness. No department protection, no badge, no identification. Only a firm determination and the belief that if the truth didn't come out, justice would die. At 10:30 p.m., she reached the cell block where the female inmates were housed in individual cells. The atmosphere there was completely different from the outside world. Graffiti-stained concrete walls, air thick with disinfectant and despair, the muffled cries of inmates, and occasionally the sound of threats and batons striking. The scene Sarah witnessed was enough to shake even the strongest person. Some correctional officers were forcing the women inmates to perform for them, some were touching their bodies inappropriately, others making crude jokes. Some women endured silently in helplessness. Others' screams were suppressed, and some wore on their faces the kind of pain that words could never describe. Sarah's heartbeat grew faster. She knew this facility wasn't just a prison. It was a dark realm where power outweighed the law. But she had come prepared. Hidden inside her clothing was a small button camera recording every scene. Beneath her collar, a concealed microphone was transmitting every sound to a tactical team outside. Detective Sarah Mitchell wasn't alone. Behind her courage stood an entire team devoted to the truth. As Sarah walked deeper inside among the inmates, a correctional officer quickly approached her. Suspicion filled his eyes and mockery curled on his lips. In a sharp tone, he said, "Hey, who are you? I've never seen you on this block before. What's your name?" Sarah took a deep breath, controlling both her anger and the truth, and softly replied, "Sir, I was transferred here just today with a new group of inmates." The officer's tone grew harsher as he asked, "What are you in for?" She lowered her eyes and said, "I'm charged with shoplifting, but I'm innocent." "I didn't do anything." The 2 or 3 officers standing nearby sneered venomously. One of them said scornfully, Yeah, every inmate says the same thing. Nobody ever tells the truth. What did you say your name was?" Keeping her voice soft, Sarah replied, "My name is Maria." One officer, full of arrogance, sneered, "That's a pretty name." Then he said, "Enough talk. Now get on your knees and show some respect, or the consequences won't be pleasant." Sarah met his gaze, calm but with a steel-clad voice, and said, "Sir, I'm here to serve my sentence, not to serve you. Until my guilt is proven, I'm not your personal servant." At those words, the atmosphere became tense. One officer's blood boiled, and shouting in rage, he barked, "Shut your mouth! You talk too much. Do what you're told or I'll put you in solitary where you'll cry for the rest of your life." Sarah steadied her voice even more, as if every door of fear had been slammed shut for her. "I didn't come here to be frightened. I came to clear the false charges against me. The more you threaten, the stronger my resolve becomes." At that moment, a weak, exhausted female inmate, Jessica, quietly shuffled over to her. Tears filled her eyes and her lips trembled as she whispered, "Sit down, girl. Don't say anything to them. Just do whatever they say. They beat and humiliate us. The only rule here is survive and keep quiet," Sarah asked her gently. "Why have you never spoken up against them?" Jessica, looking fearfully around, whispered, "There's fear here. Whoever spoke up was put in isolation, and at night they were put through things that make your soul shudder to think about." At that moment, a correctional officer stepped forward, grabbed Sarah's arm, and said in a harsh voice, "That's enough. Now I'm taking you to a holding room where all your attitude will be beaten out of you." Sarah knew the real test was starting. She followed them without a sound, and they pushed her into a dimly lit room with only 2 officers inside, Tyler and Brandon, and the door was locked from the inside. Part 6. The revelation Tyler, in a rough voice, said, "Now tell us, who are you really, and why are you causing so much trouble?" "These girls these days think they're tough," Brandon sneered. "Yeah, we can be friends, or we can be enemies who destroy lives." Sarah, calm but confident, looked them in the eye and asked, "I haven't said anything wrong, so why did you bring me here?" Tyler moved close threateningly. "Shut up! In half an hour, I'll show you your place." Sarah realized the decisive moment had come. She took a deep breath and her words thundered through the room like lightning. "Listen, my name isn't Maria. I'm Detective Sarah Mitchell, Chicago PD, and everything you're doing every moment is being recorded. My entire tactical team is monitoring my every move outside." Those words left Tyler and Brandon stunned. A shadow of fear fell across their faces. The arrogance that had lived in their voices turned into fear in an instant. Sarah's face was stern, serious, and her eyes flashed with a resolve not easily shaken. Suddenly, she revealed her real identity. The question is, why did Sarah disclose who she was so quickly? In fact, she knew these 2 officers standing before her had been posted to the facility only 2 months ago. Their souls weren't yet completely corrupted. A little humanity still remained in them, though they were slowly being consumed from within by this toxic system. Looking them squarely in the eye, Sarah asked slowly but in a heavy voice, "What are your names?" Tyler lowered his eyes, hesitantly said, "Tyler." Brandon, taking a deep breath, said, "My name is Brandon." Sarah paused for a moment. Then, in a grave voice, she asked, "Do you realize who you're dealing with right now?" Tyler and Brandon looked at each other and together said, "No, and it makes no difference to us. Everyone here bends the knee, so you'll bend too, and the captain will be here soon. Then your attitude will be stripped away. There are no heroes in this facility. Everyone falls in line." Sarah's face turned like steel, yet there was a light in her eyes that showed the confidence within. With full force, she said, "Listen, you're forgetting who stands before you. This is my final warning. Stay within your boundaries, or remember you'll lose your jobs and your freedom. But know this. I will stand right here in this facility beside the very women you've tormented, and the day I do will be the worst day of your lives." Her words roared through the room like thunder. For the first time, fear appeared on Tyler and Brandon's faces. Their legs began to tremble. Their breaths grew heavy. They realized that the woman standing before them wasn't a weak inmate, but a force impossible to suppress. With complete confidence, Sarah took out her detective's badge from inside her clothing. Beside it were her name, rank, and full department credentials. When Tyler and Brandon saw it, they immediately fell to their knees. Both of them said together, "Detective, please forgive us. We didn't recognize you. We've made a terrible mistake. We've never encountered anyone like you." Sarah took a deep breath and said slowly, "I can forgive you, but on one condition. You must stand by the truth. If you stand with me, you can survive this. Otherwise, you'll stand beside those predators I'll never spare." Tyler and Brandon instantly lowered their heads and said, "Yes, ma'am. We're with you. Whatever you say, we'll do it." Sarah looked into their eyes as if testing whether they were lying. Then she said quietly, "Then tell the truth. Every night when this facility goes dark, when the cell doors are locked, what happens to these helpless women?" Part 7. The Truth Exposed. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then the two men with heavy hearts began to reveal the secret that was about to expose the horrific face of the entire system. Tyler and Brandon looked at each other and stood still for a few seconds. Lines of fear and sweat appeared on their faces. Then, as if water began to flow from sealed lips, they started telling everything one by one. Things Sarah could never have imagined hearing. How in the darkness of night, women were taken out of their cells. How men in uniform, supposed to be protectors, turned into monsters. How scenes of physical and psychological abuse unfolded. Scenes so cruel that even describing them could shake the soul, and how senior officers covered it all up, falsifying reports to bury the truth. Sarah's face turned red with anger. Fire began to blaze in her eyes, the same fire that makes even the most hardened criminals tremble. Now she was certain that what Marcus, the kitchen worker, had said wasn't a rumor, but the naked truth. She took a small video camera and a microphone from her pocket, handed them to Tyler and Brandon, and in a voice as hard as steel said, "Keep these with you. From tonight, every moment, every second will be recorded. Everything that happens in this dark place must be brought before the world." Tyler and Brandon hesitated. Their hands began to tremble, but Sarah looked into their eyes and instilled confidence. "There's no need to be afraid. You two are new here. Your consciences are still clean. If you stand with the truth today, tomorrow your conscience will thank you." Both of them asked in astonishment, "Detective, how did you know so much about us?" Sarah smiled slightly and said, "Whenever I go on an undercover operation, I keep complete information not just about the targets, but also about potential allies. I have your names, backgrounds, even details about your families." Now, Tyler and Brandon were completely with Sarah. They took the camera and microphone and went to that dark part of the facility where, as night fell, humanity was torn apart. They captured everything. The stifled screams of the incarcerated women, the laughter of the predatory uniformed men, their crude words, and the abuse that had been hidden for years. Part 8. Justice served before dawn, Sarah silently left the facility. No one knew anything. The next morning at the department headquarters, when she presented the video evidence to the Chief and Internal Affairs, silence swept through the entire room. Senior officials were stunned. Immediately, a special investigation unit was formed. That very day, the abusive officers were arrested at the facility. Their badges were stripped, their employment terminated, and multiple felony charges were filed against them. Detective Sarah Mitchell's actions caused a sensation throughout the Chicago Police Department and made national news. She became an example that if the will is strong, even the most corrupt system can be reformed. The incarcerated women ran and fell at her feet when she returned for the official investigation. Their eyes filled with tears and lips whispering thanks. "Detective, you saved us from hell. We cried out for years and no one listened, but today we have justice." At that moment, Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. He stood before Sarah and said, "Detective Mitchell, you've accomplished what no one has been able to do until now. You've restored faith in the badge." Sarah looked at the women, then at her fellow officers, and said simply, "Justice isn't just about enforcing the law. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's what this badge means to me." And from that day forward, the Chicago Women's Correctional Center became a model facility, not because of new policies or procedures, but because one woman had the courage to walk into darkness and bring the truth into the light.